The blood on her hands wouldn't wash away, no matter how hard Nora scrubbed them in the creek water. Behind her, nestled in a makeshift bed of her only shawl, 5-year-old Caleb shivered despite the summer heat of 1875. His small face, usually animated with mischief, was flushed with fever, his breathing shallow. Nora glanced over her shoulder at the distant silhouette of the barn where they had spent the night, a temporary shelter on their journey to nowhere. 3 days had passed since they'd fled from the mining town of Silver Creek. 3 days of carrying Caleb when his little legs could walk no more, of feeding him the last bits of bread while her own stomach twisted with hunger, of whispering reassurances that everything would be all right when she herself had no such certainty. "Mama," Caleb called weakly, his voice barely audible above the gentle gurgle of the creek. Nora dried her hands on her dusty skirt and rushed to his side. "I'm here, little one." She pressed a palm to his forehead, her heart sinking at the heat radiating from his skin. The fever was getting worse. "Are we safe now?" he asked, his eyes glassy. "Yes," she lied, forcing a smile. "We're safe." They weren't safe. Not while Robert Fisk and his men could still be searching for them. Not while Caleb's fever climbed higher with each passing hour. Not while they had no food, no medicine, and nowhere to go. The rumble of approaching hooves sent a jolt of fear through Nora's body. She scooped Caleb into her arms, wincing as his weight pulled at her exhausted muscles, and scrambled toward the barn. Her mind raced with desperate calculations. The creek was too shallow to hide in. The open fields offered no cover, and the woods were too far to reach in time. The barn. It was their only hope. She slipped through a gap in the weathered boards, the musty scent of hay and animals enveloping them as darkness closed in. Nora crouched behind a stack of hay bales, cradling Caleb against her chest, her hand covering his mouth to stifle his labored breathing. The hoofbeats stopped. A door creaked. Heavy footsteps crossed the yard. "Hello?" A deep voice called out. "Anybody here?" Nora held her breath. Caleb trembled in her arms. "I know someone's around. Saw the tracks by the creek." The footsteps grew closer, boots crunching on dry grass, then on the packed dirt floor of the barn. A tall shadow fell across the hay-strewn ground. "I'm not looking for trouble," the man continued. "Just checking my property." His property. Nora's heart sank. They were trespassing, and now they would be discovered. As if on cue, Caleb's small body convulsed with a coughing fit. Nora pressed him tighter against her, but it was too late. "Behind the hay," the man said, his voice softer now. "Come on out. I won't hurt you." With no other choice, Nora rose to her feet, still clutching Caleb. Her legs trembled with fatigue and fear as she stepped into the light streaming through cracks in the barn wall. The man before her was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially shadowed by the brim of his Stetson. A cowboy, with worn leather chaps over denim pants and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. A gun belt hung at his hip, but his hand made no move toward the weapon. "Please," Nora whispered, her voice cracking. "My son is sick. We'll leave right away. Just, please don't report us." The man stepped closer, and Nora instinctively backed away. When he tilted his hat back, she saw a face weathered by sun and wind, with piercing blue eyes that studied her with unexpected gentleness. He wasn't young, perhaps in his early 30s, with lines at the corners of his eyes and a scar that ran along his jawline. "That boy needs help," he said, nodding toward Caleb, whose head lolled against her shoulder. "And so do you, from the looks of it." Nora swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. The man's gaze wasn't threatening, but she had learned the hard way not to trust kind words from strangers, especially men. "I've got a house just over that rise," he continued, pointing west. "Clean water, food, and I know a thing or two about treating fevers. We can't, Nora began. Madam, that child won't last another day out here, and you know it. The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She looked down at Caleb's flushed face, at the way his chest struggled to rise and fall with each breath. The cowboy stepped back, giving her space. I'll take you both, he said simply. No questions asked for now. You can leave whenever you want. Nora hesitated, weighing impossible choices against impossible odds. My name's Zachary Kane, he added. Most folks just call me Zach. This is my ranch. Been here 5 years now. She studied his face, searching for deceit, for the hungry look she'd seen in too many men's eyes. Instead, she saw only concern and something else, perhaps a shadow of recognition, of understanding what it meant to be desperate. Nora, she finally said. And this is Caleb. Zachary nodded. Let me take him, Nora. You look about ready to drop. She tightened her grip on Caleb. I can carry him. I respect that. But there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered honestly. When she still didn't move, he added softly, I have a sister in Kansas City. Got 2 boys of her own. If she knew I left a woman and a sick child out here, she'd ride all the way from Missouri just to tan my hide. The mention of his sister, the casual way he referenced family, it shouldn't have reassured her, but somehow it did. Or perhaps it was simply that she had run out of options. My horse is outside, Zachary continued. It's about a 15-minute ride to the house. Nora nodded slowly, decision made. Thank you, she whispered, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. Outside, a handsome chestnut gelding waited patiently. Zachary helped her mount first, then gently lifted Caleb into her arms before swinging up behind them. His chest pressed against her back as he reached around for the reins, and Nora stiffened at the proximity. Sorry, he murmured, sensing her discomfort. We'll be there soon. The horse moved at an easy pace across rolling grassland dotted with oak trees and patches of wildflowers. In the distance, Nora could see a modest house with a front porch, a corral, and several outbuildings, a proper ranch. Not the grand affair she'd feared when he'd mentioned owning property. It's not much, Zachary said, following her gaze. But it's solid. Built it myself, most of it. As they approached, Nora noticed a vegetable garden to one side of the house and chickens pecking in a fenced yard. Smoke curled from the chimney despite the summer heat. Someone was cooking. Rosa's probably got dinner on, Zachary explained, as if reading her thoughts. She helps out around the place. Nora's muscles tensed again. Your wife, housekeeper, widow from town, comes by 3 times a week. They reached the house and Zachary dismounted first, then reached up to help Nora down. When he took Caleb from her arms, she let him, too exhausted to protest further. Rosa, he called as they entered the house. We've got guests. A plump, gray-haired Mexican woman appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyebrows rose at the sight of Nora's bedraggled appearance and Caleb's limp form. Madre de Dios, she muttered, then immediately began issuing commands. The small bedroom, Senor Zach. I will bring water and clean linens. The boy needs fever, Zachary said. Bad one, from the feel of him. Rosa nodded briskly. I will make the willow bark tea and chicken broth. The senora needs food as well. I'm not, Nora began. She's not my wife, Rosa, Zachary clarified. This is Nora and her son Caleb. They were traveling and the boy took sick. I found them behind the north barn. Rosa's expression softened with understanding. Come, she said to Nora. While Senor Zach tends to your son, you will wash and change. I have a dress that may fit. Nora glanced toward Caleb, reluctant to leave him. He will be fine, Rosa assured her. Senor Zach has gentle hands. He doctors the animals and the ranch hands when they are hurt. Zachary carried Caleb down a short hallway to a small bedroom, with Rosa and Nora following. The room was simple but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the garden. "I'll bring a basin and cool water," Zachary said, laying Caleb on the bed. "Rosa's willow bark tea works wonders for fever. We'll get some broth in him too, if he'll take it." Nora hovered at the bedside, her hands twisting together. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need for that yet," he replied. "Let's just get this boy well." Over the next hours, they worked together to bring Caleb's fever down. Zachary bathed the boy's face and limbs with cool water, while Nora coaxed sips of Rosa's bitter tea between his cracked lips. Rosa bustled in and out with fresh water, clean cloths, and bowls of fragrant broth. By nightfall, Caleb's breathing had eased slightly, though his skin still burned with fever. Rosa had left for her own home in town, promising to return in the morning with more supplies. "You should rest," Zachary told Nora, who sat vigilant by Caleb's bedside. "There's another bedroom across the hall. I'll stay with him." "I can't leave him," she insisted. "Then at least take the chair," he said, gesturing to a padded rocking chair in the corner. "It's more comfortable than that stool." Too exhausted to argue, Nora moved to the rocking chair. Zachary draped a soft blanket over her legs. "I'll be right here," he promised, taking her place on the stool. "If anything changes, I'll wake you immediately." Nora meant to stay awake, to keep watch over both her son and the stranger who had shown such unexpected kindness. But the gentle creaking of the rocking chair, the warmth of the blanket, and days of fear and fatigue conspired against her. Within minutes, she was asleep. She woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating Zachary's form. He sat in the same position, gently pressing a damp cloth to Caleb's forehead. His movements were slow, methodical, careful not to disturb the sleeping child. "Any change?" Nora asked, her voice thick with sleep. Zachary glanced up, surprise flitting across his features. "I think the fever's broken," he said quietly. His skin's cooler, and his breathing steadier. Nora rose and moved to the bedside, placing her palm against Caleb's cheek. The burning heat had indeed subsided, replaced by the natural warmth of healthy sleep. Relief flooded through her, making her knees weak. "Sit," Zachary urged, guiding her back to the chair. "He's going to be fine. He's a strong boy." "Yes," she whispered. "He is." Zachary studied her face in the moonlight. "You should get some proper sleep. Take my room. I can bunk with one of the hands in the bunkhouse." "No, I couldn't, Nora," he interrupted gently. "You're dead on your feet. Caleb's fever has broken, but he'll need you strong when he wakes up. I promise you, this house is safe." She wanted to refuse, to maintain her guard, but exhaustion pulled at her like quicksand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Taking in strangers, giving up your bed." Zachary was quiet for a long moment. "I know what it's like," he finally said. "To be on the run with nowhere to go." The simple statement hung in the air between them, an admission that created a sudden, unexpected connection. "Get some sleep," he said, rising from the stool. "We can talk more tomorrow if you want, or not. Your choice." He showed her to his bedroom larger than Caleb's room, with a four-poster bed and a dresser topped with a shaving kit, a book, and a framed photograph of a woman and two children that must be his sister's family. "There's a washstand in the corner," he said, lingering at the doorway. "Clean towels in the drawer. If you need anything, Rosa will be back at dawn." "Thank you," Nora said, the words still feeling inadequate. "For everything." Zachary nodded once, then closed the door, leaving her alone. Nora crossed to the washstand and poured water from the pitcher into the basin. As she washed her face and hands, she caught sight of her reflection in the small mirror, hollow cheeks, dark circles under her eyes, hair a tangled mess. She barely recognized herself. 3 weeks ago, she had been Nora Winters, wife of Thomas Winters, living in a tidy house in Silver Creek. Then Thomas had caught a falling timber in the mine, and suddenly she was Nora Winters, widow, with no means to support herself and Caleb. 2 weeks ago, Robert Fisk, the mine owner, had made his proposition become his mistress, and he would ensure she and Caleb were provided for. When she refused, the eviction notice came the very next day. 1 week ago, she had taken a job at the Silver Spur Saloon, serving drinks to miners and cowboys. It had lasted exactly 3 days before Fisk's men cornered her in the alley behind the saloon, drunk and insistent that she reconsider Fisk's generous offer. She had escaped that night, taking Caleb and the few possessions she could carry, heading west on the stagecoach until her meager savings ran out. Then they had walked, sleeping in barns and under trees, until Caleb's fever had left them stranded behind Zachary Kane's north barn. Now, as she slipped between clean sheets in a stranger's bed, Nora allowed herself to acknowledge a terrible truth: she had no plan beyond surviving each day. No destination, no future she could envision for herself and Caleb. Sleep claimed her before she could dwell further on this realization, pulling her into blessed darkness where neither past nor future could touch her. Morning arrived with the scent of coffee and the sound of quiet voices. Nora dressed quickly in the clean clothes Rosa had left, a simple calico dress that was slightly too large but wonderfully fresh, and hurried to Caleb's room. She found him awake, propped up on pillows, a smile brightening his pale face as Rosa spooned broth into his mouth. "Mama," he called when he saw her. "Miss Rosa made chicken soup for breakfast." "I see that," Nora said, relief washing over her at the sight of her son's animated expression. She crossed to the bed and pressed a kiss to his forehead, noting with satisfaction that his skin was cool to the touch. "The fever is gone," Rosa announced proudly. "This one is strong, like a little bull." "Where are we, Mama?" Caleb asked, looking around the room with curiosity. "And who was that man who carried me on his horse?" "That's Mr. Kane," Nora explained. "This is his ranch. He's helping us while you get better." "He's nice," Caleb declared. "He told me stories about cowboys and Indians while you were sleeping." Nora glanced at Rosa, who nodded. "Senor Zach sat with him until dawn, then went to help with the morning chores. He will be back soon." As if summoned by his name, Zachary appeared in the doorway, his hat in his hands. He had changed into a fresh shirt, and his hair was damp, as if he'd recently washed. "Good morning," he said, his eyes taking in the scene: Caleb sitting up, Nora at his bedside, Rosa with her bowl of broth. "Looks like our patient is on the mend." "Thanks to you," Nora replied. Zachary shook his head. "Rosa's the one with the healing touch. I just provided the bed." "And the cool cloths and the stories," Caleb piped up. "Mr. Kane, do you really have 15 cows?" 15, Zachary laughed. "Try 150. And about 30 horses too." Caleb's eyes widened. "Can I see them?" "When you're stronger," Nora said quickly. "Of course," Zachary agreed. "In fact, I have a gentle mare that would be perfect for a young man to learn riding on." "Really?" Caleb bounced with excitement, then winced as the movement clearly pained him. "Easy there," Zachary cautioned. "You need to rest up first. Doctor's orders." "Are you a real doctor?" Caleb asked. "No, but I've patched up enough cowboys and calves to know that rest is the best medicine." Rosa stood, gathering the empty soup bowl. "I will make breakfast for the adults now. Senora Nora, you must eat to keep up your strength." I'll stay with Caleb, Zachary offered. If that's all right with you, Nora. She hesitated, still unaccustomed to trusting this man with her son, but Caleb's eager nod decided her. All right, I won't be long. In the kitchen, Rosa served a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with honey. As Nora ate, Rosa busied herself with household tasks, occasionally pausing to refill Nora's coffee cup or offer more food. Senor Zach is a good man, Rosa said finally, sitting down across from Nora with her own cup of coffee. The best I have known in my 63 years. Nora wasn't sure how to respond to this direct statement. You are afraid, Rosa continued, her dark eyes kind but perceptive. This is wise. A woman alone must be careful. But here you are safe. How can you be so sure? Nora asked quietly. Rosa sighed. 3 years ago, my son Miguel worked for the railroad. There was an accident. Many men died. The company gave no money to the families. She twisted the gold band she still wore on her left hand. My husband, he went to fight for justice. He was shot by the railroad guards. I'm so sorry, Nora whispered. Senor Zach found me cleaning houses in town for pennies. He offered me work here, good pay, and a small house in town that belonged to his ranch. He asks only honest work in return, nothing more. Rosa met Nora's gaze directly. Do you understand what I am telling you? Nora nodded slowly. Yes, I think I do. Good. Now eat more. You are too thin. After breakfast, Nora returned to Caleb's room to find him fast asleep. Zachary sitting quietly beside the bed with a book open on his lap. He just drifted off, Zachary said softly, closing the book. I was reading him some adventure stories. Thank you for watching him. It was my pleasure. He's a bright boy, asks a lot of questions. Nora smiled faintly. Yes, he's always been curious. Zachary rose from the chair. I need to check on some things around the ranch. Will you be all right here with Rosa? Yes, of course. We've already imposed too much on your hospitality. It's no imposition, he assured her. Stay as long as you need to, at least until Caleb is strong enough to travel. The thought of leaving, of returning to their uncertain journey, sent a wave of anxiety through Nora. I don't know how I'll repay you. There's no debt, Zachary said firmly. But if you're determined to contribute, Rosa could use some help with the household chores. She'd never admit it, but she's not as young as she used to be. The offer was clearly meant to preserve her dignity while allowing her to stay, and Nora appreciated the gesture. I'd be happy to help. Good. That's settled then. He moved toward the door, then paused. Nora, I know you've got your reasons for being on the road with a young child. I'm not asking for your story, but if there's someone looking for you, someone who might mean you harm, I'd like to know. For everyone's safety. The directness of his question caught her off guard. No one followed us, she said carefully. At least I don't think so. We left Silver Creek almost a week ago. Silver Creek. Zachary's expression shifted slightly. That's Fisk's territory. The name sent a chill through her. You know Robert Fisk? Know of him. Never met the man personally, which is probably for the best. Zachary's jaw tightened. He's got a reputation for getting what he wants, one way or another. Nora looked away, unwilling to reveal how accurate that assessment was. I see, Zachary said quietly, reading her silence. Well, Silver Creek's a good 80 miles east of here, and Fisk rarely ventures this far from his mines. You should be safe. Thank you, Nora managed. I'll be back for dinner, Zachary said, settling his hat on his head. Rosa makes a mean beef stew on Tuesdays. After he left, Nora sat beside Caleb's bed, watching her son's peaceful sleep. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that they might truly be safe, at least for now. The days fell into a pattern. Caleb grew stronger, his natural energy and curiosity returning. Nora helped Rosa with cooking and cleaning, learning the rhythms of the ranch house. Zachary was often away during the days, working with his ranch hands, checking on cattle, or riding his property lines. But he returned each evening for dinner, bringing stories that made Caleb laugh and small treasures: a hawk feather, an interesting rock, once even a tiny carved wooden horse that he'd whittled himself. A week passed, then another. Nora found herself watching for Zachary's return each day, enjoying the way his face lit up when he greeted Caleb, the careful respect with which he addressed her, the quiet strength he brought into any room he entered. One evening, after Caleb had been put to bed and Rosa had departed for her home in town, Nora found herself alone with Zachary on the front porch. The summer night was mild, stars scattered across the vast Texas sky like diamonds on black velvet. "Caleb rode Daisy today," Zachary commented, referring to the gentle mare he'd mentioned that first day. "Just around the corral with me leading her. He's got a natural seat." "He was so excited," Nora said. "It's all he could talk about at dinner." "I noticed." Zachary smiled. "He's a good kid, Nora. You've done well with him, especially." He trailed off. "Especially under the circumstances," she finished for him. "Yes." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the occasional soft nickering from the horse corral. "My husband died in the mines," Nora said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. 3 weeks before Caleb and I left Silver Creek." Zachary didn't respond immediately, giving her space to continue or not, as she chose. "Thomas was a good man. Not perfect, he drank too much sometimes, and he had a temper when provoked. But he worked hard, and he loved Caleb." She twisted her hands in her lap. "When he died, Fisk gave me 1 week to vacate the company house. Said he needed it for new miners coming in." "Sounds like Fisk," Zachary commented, his voice tight with disapproval. "Then he offered me an arrangement. Said I could stay in the house if I'd provide him with certain companionship." Zachary's hands gripped the arms of his chair, knuckles whitening, but his voice remained calm. "I'm guessing you declined." "Yes, I took a job at the saloon instead. It didn't pay much, but it was honest work." Nora swallowed hard. "Then one night, 2 of Fisk's men cornered me after my shift. Said their boss wasn't accustomed to being refused, that I should reconsider his offer." "Did they hurt you?" Zachary asked, the question gentle but direct. "No." The bartender heard the commotion and came out with a shotgun. "But the message was clear: Fisk wasn't finished with me." She took a shaky breath. "I packed our things that night. We were on the stagecoach by morning, heading west. I had no destination in mind, just away. And then Caleb got sick. Yes, we'd been walking for 2 days when the fever hit. I thought..." Her voice caught. "I thought I was going to lose him too." Without warning, tears spilled down her cheeks, tears she'd been holding back for weeks, months perhaps. She covered her face with her hands, embarrassed by the display of emotion. Warm, calloused fingers wrapped around her wrist, gently pulling her hand away from her face. "It's all right," Zachary said softly. "You're safe now. Both of you." "For how long?" Nora asked, voicing the fear that had been growing as Caleb recovered. "We can't stay here forever, imposing on your kindness." "Why not?" The simple question caught her off guard. "What? Why can't you stay?" Zachary's eyes held hers steadily. "This ranch needs a woman's touch. Rosa does her best, but she's here only a few days a week, and I could use an extra pair of hands with the books and correspondence. My foreman, Patrick, has been handling it, but he'd rather be with the cattle." "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a home, Nora, for you and Caleb. No strings attached, no." Arrangements. He said the word with distaste. Just honest work for fair pay, and a safe place to raise your son. The offer was so unexpected, so generous, that Nora found herself speechless. You don't have to decide tonight, Zachary continued. Think about it. Talk to Caleb, though I suspect I know what his answer would be. That boy's halfway to becoming a cowboy already. Zachary, Zach, he corrected gently. My friends call me Zach. Zach, she amended, the name feeling right on her lips. Thank you. I will think about it. He nodded, then rose from his chair. I should turn in. Early start tomorrow moving some cattle to the north pasture. Good night, Nora said, remaining on the porch as he entered the house. She sat for a long time under the stars, considering his offer. A home, safety, work that would allow her to provide for Caleb without fear or shame. Seemed too good to be true, and yet she had come to know Zachary Kane over these past weeks. Had seen his kindness, his integrity, the respect he showed to everyone from Rosa to the youngest ranch hand. If any man's offer could be trusted, it was his. There was something else too, something she was hesitant to acknowledge, even to herself, a warmth that spread through her whenever he entered a room, a flutter in her stomach when their hands accidentally touched passing the salt at dinner, a sense of rightness when they sat together in the evenings while Caleb played with his wooden toys on the rug before the fireplace. It had been only a month since Thomas's death. Was it disloyal to feel this way about another man so soon? Or was it simply the natural response of a heart that had been lonely even before widowhood, seeking connection with a kindred spirit? These questions followed Nora into sleep that night and greeted her again with the dawn. The next morning, Zachary left before breakfast, as he'd said he would. Caleb was disappointed to miss him, especially since he'd promised to let the boy help collect eggs from the chicken coop. Don't worry, Rosa told him as she set a plate of flapjacks before him. Senor Zach always keeps his promises. He will take you when he returns. When will that be? Caleb asked, drowning his flapjacks in maple syrup. This evening, most likely, Nora answered. Moving cattle is hard work that takes all day. I want to help move cattle when I'm bigger, Caleb declared. Mr. Zach says I can be a cowboy if I practice riding Daisy every day. Nora and Rosa exchanged a glance over the boy's head. Does he now? Nora asked, her heart giving a little twist at her son's enthusiasm. And is that what you want to be when you grow up? A cowboy? Yes, Caleb beamed. And Mr. Zach says I can stay here and learn, that this can be our home now. Isn't that grand, Mama? So Zachary had already spoken to Caleb about staying. Nora should have been annoyed at him for discussing it with her son before she had given her answer, but she couldn't find it in herself to be angry. Not when Caleb looked happier than he had in months. We'll see, she said noncommittally. Eat your breakfast now. Later, while Caleb napped and Rosa kneaded dough for the evening bread, Nora found herself in Zachary's study, a small room off the main parlor that contained a desk, bookshelves, and a cabinet of papers. She had been dusting in here every few days but had never looked closely at his belongings, feeling it would be an invasion of his privacy. Now, though, if she was considering accepting his offer of employment, she wanted to understand what work he expected her to do. She examined the account books on the desk, noting the neat columns of figures tracking cattle sales, supply purchases, and wages paid to the ranch hands. A stack of correspondence sat in one corner, most of it unopened. Land office notices, cattle broker inquiries, and several letters from Kansas City that must be from his sister. Everything was organized, if somewhat neglected. She was about to close the ledger when a newspaper clipping fell from between its pages. Picking it up, Nora saw it was from the Austin Gazette, dated 3 years earlier. The headline read, Former Ranger acquitted in shooting of Silver Creek mine guard. With growing astonishment, She read the short article, which detailed how Zachary Kane, a former Texas Ranger, had been tried and acquitted for the shooting of a guard at Fisk Mining Company. The jury had accepted Kane's claim of self-defense after evidence showed the guard had drawn first during a confrontation over labor conditions at the mine. The article went on to mention that Kane had been working as a cattle buyer at the time, purchasing stock for his new ranch, and had become involved in a miners' dispute after witnessing guards beating a worker. It concluded by noting that Robert Fisk had vowed to appeal the verdict, calling Kane a dangerous agitator who should be behind bars. "He never mentioned this," Nora murmured to herself. "He would not." Rosa's voice came from the doorway, startling Nora. "Senor Zach does not speak of the past. You knew about this?" Rosa nodded, entering the room and carefully taking the clipping from Nora's hands. "My husband was one of the miners who testified at the trial. Senor Zach tried to help the workers get fair treatment. Fisk's men tried to kill him for it. When the court freed him, Fisk swore revenge. That's why he offered me work after your husband died," Nora realized. "He felt responsible. Perhaps in part," Rosa acknowledged, "but also because he is a good man who helps those in need." She tucked the clipping back into the ledger. "Fisk has not forgotten his hatred. That is why Senor Zach rarely goes to town, and never to Silver Creek or the surrounding settlements. It is also why he lives alone with no wife or family. He will not risk bringing Fisk's vengeance on those he loves." The revelation shifted something in Nora's understanding of Zachary Kane. He wasn't just a kind-hearted rancher who had taken pity on a desperate woman and child. He was a man who had stood against injustice, who had faced danger and sacrifice for his principles, and who continued to live with the consequences of those choices. "Does he know?" Nora asked suddenly. "That I ran from Fisk?" Rosa's expression softened. "I do not think so. You said Silver Creek, but not Fisk's name. And Senor Zach would not pry into your secrets. But if he knew, he might not want us to stay. It could bring danger to his door. Or perhaps," Rosa suggested gently, "he would understand better than anyone." The conversation lingered in Nora's mind throughout the day as she went about her chores. By evening, when the sound of horses in the yard announced Zachary's return, she had made her decision. Caleb ran to the door, eager to greet Zachary and hear about his day with the cattle. Nora followed more slowly, her heart pounding with anticipation and a touch of fear. Zachary entered, his clothes dusty from the day's work, his face sunburned beneath the brim of his hat. He scooped Caleb up with a laugh, spinning him around before setting him back on his feet. "Did you move all the cows, Mr. Zach?" Caleb asked excitedly. "Every last one," Zachary confirmed. "And they were as stubborn as mules about it, too. Can I help next time?" "When you're a bit bigger," Zachary promised. "For now, how about those chicken eggs we talked about? Early tomorrow morning, before breakfast." "Yes, please." Caleb bounced on his toes. Zachary's gaze moved past Caleb to Nora, his smile softening. "Evening, Nora." "Welcome back," she replied. "Dinner's almost ready. You have time to wash up." As they sat down to Rosa's beef stew and fresh bread, Nora observed the easy way Zachary interacted with Caleb, drawing him out about his day, listening attentively to his childish chatter. It was the behavior of a man who genuinely enjoyed children, not someone merely tolerating a child for his mother's sake. After dinner, once Caleb had been tucked into bed with a promise from Zachary to wake him early for egg collecting, Nora found herself once again on the porch with Zachary. The evening was cooler than the night before, a hint of autumn in the air despite it being only late August. "I've been thinking about your offer," Nora began without preamble. Zachary turned to look at her, his expression carefully neutral. "And I found the newspaper article today about your trial, about Fisk." his face stilled, a muscle working in his jaw. I see. Why didn't you tell me? Zachary sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. It wasn't relevant. Or so I thought. It's very relevant, Zach. I ran from Fisk. If he's your enemy too, then having me here could put you in danger. Fisk has plenty of enemies, Zachary replied. One more won't make much difference. It might if he's looking for me specifically. Nora hesitated, then added, he seemed fixated. Zachary's expression darkened. Men like Fisk don't take rejection well. They see women as possessions to be acquired, not people with their own will. Then you understand why I can't stay. I won't bring his anger down on you, not after everything you've done for us. Nora. Zachary leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. This ranch is 20 miles from the nearest town. I have good men working for me who are loyal and discreet. Fisk has no reason to look for you here, and even if he did, he'd find it difficult to reach you. You can't be sure of that. No, he admitted. I can't be sure of anything in this life, but I know this running forever is no life for you or Caleb. Sooner or later, you need to stand your ground. That's easy for you to say, Nora protested. You're a man, a former ranger. You can defend yourself. And I can defend you and Caleb too, if it comes to that. Zachary's voice was steady, certain. But it likely won't. Fisk's power doesn't extend this far west. He's got his mines to worry about, his profits. He won't expend resources hunting down one widow who refused him. Put that way, it did seem unlikely that Fisk would pursue her across such a distance. And Zachary was right about one thing: she couldn't run forever. Caleb needed stability, a home, a chance at a normal childhood. All right, she said finally. We'll stay. I accept your offer of employment. Relief washed across Zachary's face. Good. That's good. But on one condition, Nora added. Name it. You must promise to be honest with me from now on. No more secrets, no more protecting me from the truth. If we're to work together, live in the same house, there must be trust between us. Zachary nodded slowly. That's fair. No more secrets. He extended his hand. Partners. Nora placed her hand in his, feeling the strength and warmth of his grip. Partners. As summer gave way to autumn, the ranch settled into new rhythms. Nora took over the household accounts and correspondence, discovering a talent for organization that impressed even Zachary. Caleb thrived in the open air, growing stronger and more confident with each passing day. He followed Zachary like a shadow whenever the rancher was around, soaking up knowledge about horses, cattle, and the land. For her part, Nora found herself watching Zachary with increasing frequency, the way he moved with quiet confidence, the gentle patience he showed with Caleb, the respect he commanded from his men without ever raising his voice. There was a steadiness to him that drew her, a reliability that had been lacking in her marriage to Thomas, for all his good qualities. Zachary, too, seemed to seek her company in the evenings after Caleb was asleep. They would sit on the porch or by the fire, talking about the day's events, plans for the ranch, or sometimes deeper matters: his years as a ranger, her childhood in Missouri, the dreams they had harbored and lost and found again. There were moments when their conversations lapsed into comfortable silence, when their eyes would meet across the room, when his hand would brush hers as they reached for the same object. In those moments, Nora felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the crackling fire or the Texas sun. But neither of them spoke of these feelings, this growing awareness between them. Nora was still, technically, in mourning for Thomas. And Zachary, for all his directness in other matters, seemed determined to maintain a respectful distance where her heart was concerned. Until the night of the autumn storm. It began as a distant rumble of thunder during dinner. By the time they had cleared the dishes, Rain was lashing at the windows and wind howled around the eaves of the house. "I should check on the horses," Zachary said, reaching for his oilskin coat. "The new colts get spooked by storms." "I'll come with you," Nora offered, already reaching for her shawl. "An extra pair of hands might help." "It's pouring out there," he protested. "I'm not made of sugar," she replied with a smile. "I won't melt." Despite his concern, Zachary couldn't suppress an answering smile. "All right then, but stay close. Visibility will be poor." Rosa agreed to listen for Caleb, who was already asleep and unlikely to wake during the storm. Then Nora and Zachary ventured out into the tempest, heads bent against the driving rain, making their way carefully to the horse barn. Inside, the horses were indeed agitated, moving restlessly in their stalls, eyes rolling at each crack of thunder. Zachary moved among them with soothing words and gentle touches, while Nora followed his lead, speaking softly to the nervous animals. The youngest colt, a 3-month-old with spindly legs and a copper coat, was particularly distressed, rearing and kicking in his stall. "Easy, boy," Zachary murmured, entering the stall with careful movements. "It's just noise, nothing to fear." Nora watched from the doorway as Zachary approached the frightened animal, his voice a steady, calming presence amid the storm's fury. The colt gradually settled, allowing Zachary to stroke his neck and muzzle. "There now," he said, glancing back at Nora with a smile. "Crisis averted." At that moment, a blinding flash of lightning struck nearby, followed instantly by a deafening crack of thunder. The horses startled, and the colt reared in terror, hooves slashing through the air. Zachary moved quickly to avoid being struck, but the colt's shoulder slammed into him, sending him staggering back against the stall wall. "Zach!" Nora cried, rushing forward as the rancher slumped to the ground. He grimaced, one hand pressed to his side. "I'm all right, just knocked the wind out of me." But when he tried to stand, he faltered, his face paling with pain. "You're hurt," Nora said, kneeling beside him. "Let me see." Reluctantly, Zachary moved his hand, revealing a rapidly spreading bloodstain on his shirt. "Must have caught a nail in the wall," he muttered. Nora quickly examined the wound, a deep gash in his side that was bleeding freely. "We need to get you back to the house," she said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the fear that clutched at her heart. "Can you walk if I help you?" Zachary nodded grimly. With Nora's support, he managed to stand and make his slow way out of the stall and through the barn. The storm still raged outside, but neither of them noticed the rain as they focused on the painful journey back to the house. Rosa exclaimed in alarm when they entered, Zachary leaning heavily on Nora, both of them soaked to the skin and spattered with blood. "Dios mío, what happened?" "Spooked colt," Zachary explained through gritted teeth. "Caught a nail or something in the stall." "Bring him to his room," Rosa directed, already hurrying to gather medical supplies. "We must clean the wound, stop the bleeding." Between them, the women managed to get Zachary to his bedroom and onto the bed. Rosa cut away his shirt while Nora brought a basin of hot water and clean cloths. The wound was ugly, a jagged tear about 4 inches long that cut deep into the flesh of his side. It was bleeding steadily, though not with the pulsing flow that would indicate a damaged artery. "It needs stitching," Rosa declared after examining it closely. "I have done this before for my husband and sons. But my eyes are not what they were, and my hands shake now." "I can do it," Nora said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I used to help the doctor in Silver Creek sometimes, when there were too many injuries after accidents at the mine. He taught me basic stitching." Rosa nodded approvingly. "Good. I will prepare what you need." Zachary, who had been silent during this exchange, now spoke. "I don't suppose there's any whiskey in that medical kit?" "Better," Rosa replied, producing a brown bottle from a cabinet. Tequila, my cousin's recipe. Very strong. She poured a generous amount into a glass and handed it to Zachary, who drank it down in one swallow, coughing slightly as the potent liquid burned its way down his throat. Another, he requested, his voice rough. Rosa obliged, then set about cleaning the wound with carbolic solution, while Nora threaded a curved needle with catgut. The smell of antiseptic and tequila filled the room, mixing with the metallic scent of blood. This will hurt, Nora warned as she prepared to begin stitching. Zachary's eyes met hers, pain already evident in their blue depths. I trust you, he said simply. Those 3 words gave Nora a strange sort of courage. With steady hands, she began to close the wound, each stitch precise and careful. Zachary remained still throughout the procedure, his jaw clenched, his breathing controlled. Only the occasional tightening of his fingers on the bedsheet betrayed his pain. When she had finished, Rosa applied a poultice of herbs and covered the wound with clean bandages. He should rest now, she said. I will stay tonight, in case fever develops. No need, Nora insisted. I'll stay with him. You should go home before the storm worsens. Rosa studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Very well. I will check on the boy before I leave. Make sure he still sleeps. She gathered the bloodied cloths and basin. Change the bandage in the morning. And if fever comes, use the willow bark tea, as we did for the child. After Rosa had gone, Nora pulled a chair close to Zachary's bedside. He lay with his eyes closed, his breathing even but shallow, his face pale beneath his tan. You don't have to stay, he murmured without opening his eyes. I'll be fine. I'm staying, Nora replied firmly. Rosa says fever might develop, and someone needs to watch for bleeding. Zachary's lips curved in a faint smile. Always practical. One of us has to be. His eyes opened then, focusing on her with surprising clarity given the pain and tequila. Thank you. For the stitches. For helping with the horses. For everything. You would do the same for me, Nora said softly. You have done the same and more. Not the same, he disagreed. Taking you and Caleb in wasn't a sacrifice. It was. He hesitated, searching for words. It was selfish in a way. Selfish, Nora repeated, confused. How? Zachary's gaze held hers steadily. Because I wanted you here. Both of you. This house was just a place to sleep until you arrived. Now it's beginning to feel like a home. The simple admission stole Nora's breath. Zach, you don't have to say anything, he added quickly. I know it's too soon. Your husband, the mourning period. I respect that. I just wanted you to know. Nora reached out impulsively and took his hand in hers. Thomas has been gone for nearly 4 months now, she said quietly. We had a good marriage in many ways, but it wasn't. It wasn't what I see between you and me. Zachary's fingers tightened around hers. And what do you see, Nora? Understanding, respect, a partnership of equals. She took a deep breath. And something more, something I'm afraid to name yet, but it's there, growing stronger each day. I feel it too, Zachary admitted, his voice low and intense despite his weakened state. Have felt it since I found you behind that barn, holding Caleb, so fierce and protective despite your fear. I was terrified, Nora confessed, not just of the fever or of being discovered. I was terrified of trusting another man after what happened in Silver Creek. I know, and I've tried to be patient, to give you time and space. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. I can be patient a while longer, if that's what you need. Nora studied their joined hands, his large and weathered from years of outdoor work, hers smaller but no less capable, marked by her own labors. They fit together somehow, these different hands. Perhaps I've had enough time, she said finally, raising her eyes to his. Perhaps what I need now is courage. Before she could reconsider, Nora leaned forward and pressed her lips gently to his. It was a brief kiss, warm and sweet and full of promise. When she drew back, Zachary was watching her with wonder in his eyes. You should rest now, she said, suddenly shy. Doctor's orders. He smiled, bringing her hand to his lips for a kiss that sent warmth cascading through her. Yes, madam. She stayed beside him as he drifted into sleep, her fingers still entwined with his, her heart full of a quiet joy that felt both new and somehow inevitable, like the first green shoots after a long winter. The next morning, Caleb discovered that his friend Mr. Zach was confined to bed. After being assured that the rancher would recover, the boy appointed himself special assistant to Nora, bringing water and extra pillows, and regaling Zachary with stories to make the hurt go away faster. Zachary bore this attention with good humor, though Nora could see the pain in his eyes when he moved too quickly or laughed too hard at one of Caleb's jokes. The wound was clean with no signs of infection, but it would take time to heal properly. For 3 days, Zachary remained in bed, with Nora changing his bandages and Rosa preparing special broths and teas to speed his recovery. On the 4th day, despite Nora's protests, he insisted on getting up and moving around the house. A man can't heal properly lying on his back all day, he declared. I need to at least see what's happening on my ranch. Patrick has everything under control, Nora reminded him. He's been giving me daily reports, as you asked. I know and I appreciate it, but I'm going stir-crazy in that bedroom. Recognizing the stubborn set of his jaw, Nora relented. Fine, but no riding, no lifting, and no going outside alone. Doctor's orders. Zachary's eyes crinkled with amusement. You're getting mighty comfortable giving orders around here, Miss Nora. Someone has to keep you in line, Mr. Kane, she replied with equal humor. Their banter was interrupted by a commotion outside, horses arriving in the yard, men's voices calling out. Zachary moved to the window, Nora close behind him. 3 riders had arrived, 2 of them supporting a 3rd man who appeared to be injured. Patrick, Zachary's foreman, was helping them dismount. Trouble, Zachary muttered, already reaching for his gun belt. You're not going out there, Nora said firmly, placing a hand on his arm. You can barely stand upright for more than 10 minutes. I'll go see what's happening. Before he could protest, she was out the door and across the porch. As she approached the group, Patrick turned to her with relief. Miss Nora, where's the boss? Resting, she replied. He was injured a few days ago. What's happened here? Found this fella about 5 miles south, Patrick explained, gesturing to the injured man who was now seated on a bench, clutching his bloodied arm. Says he was set upon by road agents who took his horse and gear. He's got a nasty gash that needs tending. Nora examined the stranger, a man in his 40s, well-dressed despite the dust and blood on his clothing, with a trimmed beard and intelligent eyes that watched her warily. Bring him inside, she decided. I'll clean and dress that wound. The men helped the stranger into the house, where Zachary was waiting in the parlor, his face tight with concern. When he saw the injured man, his expression changed to one of surprise, then wariness. Judge Wilson, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is unexpected. The man nodded, grimacing with pain. Kane, I didn't realize this was your ranch until your men mentioned your name. You two know each other? Nora asked, looking between them. Judge Wilson presided over my trial 3 years ago, Zachary explained, his eyes never leaving the judge's face. The one I told you about. Understanding dawned. This was the man who had acquitted Zachary of shooting Fisk's guard, the decision that had earned him Fisk's enduring enmity. I'll get the medical supplies, Nora said, sensing the tension in the room. Patrick, would you ask Rosa to prepare some food for our guest? As the men dispersed to carry out her requests, Nora hurried to gather bandages and antiseptic. When she returned to the parlor, Zachary and Judge Wilson were engaged in quiet conversation that ceased abruptly at her entrance. "Let me see that arm," she said briskly, setting down her supplies. The judge's wound was not as deep as Zachary's had been, but it was long and ragged, extending from wrist to elbow. "This will need cleaning. It may sting." As she worked, the two men resumed their conversation, speaking in low tones. "What brings you to these parts, Judge?" Zachary asked. "Austin Circuit doesn't usually extend this far west." "Special assignment," Wilson replied, wincing as Nora applied antiseptic to his wound. "Investigating reports of corruption in land offices. There have been irregularities in property registrations, claims being denied without cause. Fisk's doing." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Among others, certain mining and railroad interests have been expanding aggressively, by legal means when possible, by other means when not." Zachary nodded grimly. "And the attack on the road? Random bandits? Or something more targeted?" "Hard to say for certain. They took my horse and saddlebags, which contained some documents. Could have been common thieves. Could have been something else." "Did they know who you were?" "They didn't ask, and I didn't volunteer the information." Nora finished bandaging the judge's arm and stepped back. "It should heal cleanly if you keep it clean and dry. I can give you extra bandages for when you continue your journey." Wilson nodded his thanks. "I appreciate your help, Mrs. Winters," she supplied. "Nora Winters. Mrs. Winters has been helping with the ranch books and correspondence," Zachary explained. "She and her son Caleb have been staying here for the past few months." The judge's gaze moved between them, assessing. "I see." Before the conversation could continue, Rosa entered with a tray of food, followed by Caleb, who had been helping in the kitchen. "Mr. Zach!" the boy exclaimed, rushing to Zachary's side. "Rosa let me stir the stew all by myself." "Did she now?" Zachary smiled, ruffling Caleb's hair. "You're becoming quite the cook." Caleb beamed, then noticed Judge Wilson. "Who are you, mister? Did you get hurt like Mr. Zach?" "He got kicked by a horse, but Mama fixed him up with stitches." "Caleb," Nora began, embarrassed by her son's forthrightness. But Wilson smiled, his stern features softening. "My name is Judge Wilson, young man. And yes, I got hurt, but your mother has fixed me up too. She's very skilled." "She is," Caleb agreed proudly. "And she makes the best apple cake in Texas. Are you staying for dinner? We're having stew." "If Mr. Kane doesn't mind," Wilson replied, glancing at Zachary. "I would appreciate a night's rest before continuing my journey." "Of course," Zachary said. "You're welcome to stay. Patrick can arrange for a horse for you in the morning." The judge's presence at dinner created an odd tension. He was polite, even charming with Caleb, but Nora sensed an underlying wariness in his interactions with Zachary. For his part, Zachary maintained a careful civility that stopped short of true friendliness. After Caleb had been put to bed, the adults sat in the parlor with coffee. Rosa had returned to town, and Patrick to the bunkhouse, leaving Nora alone with Zachary and the judge. "Mrs. Winters," Wilson said after a thoughtful silence, "if you don't mind my asking, where did you live before coming to Mr. Kane's ranch?" Nora tensed, glancing at Zachary, who gave her a slight nod. "Silver Creek," she answered. "My husband worked in the mines there until his death earlier this year." The judge's eyebrows rose. "Silver Creek. Fisk's territory." "Yes. And you left after your husband's death?" "A few weeks after, yes." Wilson studied her face. Any particular reason for the move? Nora met his gaze steadily. Robert Fisk made certain propositions that I found unacceptable. When I refused him, he made it clear that Silver Creek was no longer a safe place for me or my son. The judge nodded slowly, as if her answer confirmed something he had suspected. I see. And you came directly here? No. We traveled west by stagecoach as far as our money would take us, then continued on foot. Caleb fell ill with fever. Mr. Kane found us sheltering in one of his barns and offered help. Generous of him, Wilson commented, his eyes moving to Zachary. It was the decent thing to do, Zachary replied evenly. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone, Nora contradicted softly. Not Fisk. No, Wilson agreed. Not Fisk. He set down his coffee cup with a decisive click. Mr. Kane, Mrs. Winters, I should be direct with you. My presence here is not entirely coincidental. Zachary straightened in his chair, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his healing wound. Meaning that while I am indeed investigating land office corruption, I was specifically interested in this region because of reports that reached me in Austin. The judge leaned forward. Reports that Robert Fisk has been making inquiries about a widow and child who fled Silver Creek. He seems quite determined to find them. A chill ran through Nora. He's looking for us? After all this time? It would appear so. And he's offering a substantial reward for information leading to your whereabouts. Zachary's face hardened. Why? What possible interest could he have in pursuing a woman who simply rejected his advances? Wilson shrugged. Men like Fisk don't take rejection well. It becomes a matter of pride, of showing others that no one defies them without consequences. But there may be more to it. The timing of your departure from Silver Creek coincides with some irregularities in Fisk's business dealings that I've been investigating. What kind of irregularities? Zachary asked. Records of mineral rights transfers, property deeds, tax payments documents that should be on file but have mysteriously disappeared. Wilson turned to Nora. Did your husband leave any papers? Legal documents? Correspondence? Anything unusual? Nora frowned, thinking back. Thomas kept a strongbox under our bed. After he died, I looked through it, just some savings, our marriage certificate, the deed to a small plot of land his father left him in Missouri. Nothing related to the mine? No letters or contracts? No, I don't think. She stopped, a memory surfacing. Wait. There was a folded paper with a seal on it. I didn't look at it closely. It was addressed to the land office in Austin. I assumed it was something to do with the Missouri property, so I packed it with our important papers. Wilson leaned forward, suddenly intent. Do you still have this document? Yes. It's in my trunk, with Caleb's baby book and Thomas's watch. May I see it? Nora hesitated, looking to Zachary, who nodded encouragingly. I'll get it, she said, rising from her chair. In her room, Nora opened the small trunk that contained the few possessions she had brought from Silver Creek. At the bottom, wrapped in a piece of muslin, was a packet of papers, the important documents of her life with Thomas. She located the sealed letter easily, having never opened it. When she returned to the parlor, both men stood, an unnecessary formality that nonetheless reminded her of the seriousness of the situation. She handed the letter to Judge Wilson, who examined the seal carefully before breaking it. As he read the contents, his expression grew increasingly grave. Mrs. Winters, he said finally, do you know what this is? No, she replied honestly. It's a sworn affidavit from your husband, dated 1 week before his death, testifying that Robert Fisk has been systematically falsifying mineral survey reports to expand his mining claims beyond their legal boundaries. Wilson held up the document. He names specific properties, dates, government officials who were bribed. It's detailed, damning evidence. Thomas never mentioned any of this to me, Nora said, stunned. Why would he keep it secret? To protect you, Zachary suggested. If Fisk found out he was gathering evidence. Precisely, Wilson agreed. This document was meant for the Federal Land Office, but it never arrived. Your husband's death may not have been the accident it appeared to be. The implications of his words struck Nora like a physical blow. Are you saying Thomas was murdered? That the timber that fell on him was perhaps not an accident, Wilson finished gently. I can't prove it, of course, but it fits a pattern we've seen with other witnesses against powerful interests. Nora sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. And now Fisk is looking for me because he thinks I have this document. Or because he knows you do, Zachary said grimly. If he had Thomas killed, he may have searched your house afterward, found the strongbox empty. Which means, Wilson added, that you are in very real danger, Mrs. Winters. Both you and your son. Zachary moved to stand beside Nora's chair, his hand coming to rest protectively on her shoulder. What do you suggest, Judge? She can't keep running forever. Wilson considered the question carefully. This evidence, combined with what I've already gathered, is enough to bring formal charges against Fisk. But the legal process takes time, and he has powerful friends. So what do we do in the meantime? Nora asked, her voice steadier than she felt. I won't put Caleb at risk again. You stay here, Zachary said firmly. The ranch is defensible, my men are loyal, and Fisk has no reason to connect you with me. Unless someone talks, Wilson pointed out. You've been in town, Mrs. Winters. People have seen you, perhaps heard your name. Only Rosa knows we came from Silver Creek, Nora said, and she would never betray us. Nevertheless, precautions should be taken. Wilson folded the document and handed it back to Nora. Keep this safe. I'll return to Austin with copies of the relevant portions. Once formal charges are filed, Fisk will have legal troubles enough to forget about pursuing you. How long will that take? Zachary asked. A month, perhaps 2. The wheels of justice turn slowly, I'm afraid. 2 months. 2 more months of looking over her shoulder, of worrying every time a stranger approached the ranch, of fearing for Caleb's safety. Nora wasn't sure she could bear it. As if sensing her thoughts, Zachary's hand tightened on her shoulder. We'll manage, he said quietly. Together. Wilson observed this exchange with thoughtful eyes. There is one other option that might provide additional protection, he suggested. A legal one. What's that? Zachary asked. Marriage. The judge held up a hand as both Nora and Zachary stared at him in surprise. Hear me out. If Mrs. Winters becomes Mrs. Kane, several things change legally. First, Fisk would have more difficulty claiming any rights to pursue her based on her late husband's affairs. Second, as your wife, she would be under the protection of your name and reputation, which still carries weight from your ranger days. Third, it would explain her presence here in a way that wouldn't raise suspicions. Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks. Judge Wilson, while I appreciate your concern, marriage is a serious commitment, not a legal convenience. Of course, Wilson agreed. I wouldn't suggest it if I thought it was merely a matter of convenience. His gaze moved between them. I'm an old man who has seen many marriages, both in and out of my courtroom. Some based on love, some on necessity, some on both. I think I can recognize when there might be a foundation for something genuine. Zachary cleared his throat. Judge, while your suggestion has merit, this is hardly the appropriate way to discuss such matters. Wilson smiled slightly. Perhaps not. But unusual circumstances sometimes require unusual solutions. He rose from his chair. I should retire for the night. We can discuss this further in the morning if you wish. Or not, as you prefer. After the judge had gone to the guest room, Nora and Zachary sat in awkward silence, the judge's suggestion hanging in the air between them. He's very direct, Nora finally said, attempting a light tone. Judges often are, Zachary replied. Comes with the territory, I suppose. Another silence fell, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the mantel and the occasional pop from the dying fire. Nora, Zachary began hesitantly, I want you to know that I don't expect— I know, she interrupted. It was just a suggestion. A practical solution to a temporary problem. Yes, practical. He studied her face. Is that all it would be to you? A practical arrangement. The directness of his question caught her off guard. I don't know, she admitted. These past months, living here, working with you, watching you with Caleb. It's been more than I ever expected to find after Thomas died. For me too, Zachary said quietly. More than I thought possible after I gave up on the idea of a family. Fisk's vendetta made it seem too dangerous, too selfish to bring someone else into my life. And now, Nora asked, her heart pounding. Now I find that the danger has found us anyway, through no fault of our own. He moved from behind her chair to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. Nora, I won't pretend that the judge's suggestion isn't tempting for practical reasons. But I need you to know that my feelings for you, for Caleb, go far beyond practicality. Mine too, she whispered. I had planned to wait to give you more time, Zachary continued. But perhaps time is a luxury we don't have. He took a deep breath. I love you, Nora Winters. I think I have since I found you behind that barn. Fierce as a mother bear protecting her cub despite your own fear and exhaustion. Tears welled in Nora's eyes. Zach, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. And if your answer is no, nothing changes. You and Caleb still have a home here for as long as you want it. But if there's any chance that you might someday return these feelings. I already do, Nora interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion. I love you too, Zachary Kane. You've shown me what a true partnership can be, what it means to be respected as well as cherished. You've given Caleb a role model, a father figure who teaches him kindness and strength in equal measure. Joy transformed Zachary's face. Then will you marry me, Nora? Not just for protection or practicality, but because we want to build a life together. Yes, she said without hesitation. Yes, I will marry you. He rose then, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, mindful of his healing wound, but deepened as Nora responded, her arms circling his neck, her body pressing close to his. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. Judge Wilson will be unbearably smug about this in the morning, he murmured. Nora laughed softly. Let him be. He's earned it. The following morning, they shared their decision with Judge Wilson over breakfast. As predicted, he received the news with a satisfied nod. I'm authorized to perform marriages as part of my circuit duties, he offered. If you wish, we could have the ceremony before I leave. Nora and Zachary exchanged glances. That's very kind, Nora began. But I think we'd prefer— Yes, Caleb interrupted excitedly. Can we do it today? Rosa can make a cake, and I can be the ring bearer. Caleb, Nora admonished gently. We haven't even discussed this with you yet. Don't you want to know what's happening? The boy rolled his eyes with the supreme confidence of a child who understands more than adults give him credit for. You and Mr. Zach are getting married. That means he'll be my new pa, and we'll all live here together forever. He looked at them expectantly. Right? Zachary knelt down to Caleb's level, his expression serious. That's right, if it's all right with you. I care very much for your mother, and for you too. I'd be honored to be your pa, but I know you had a father who loved you very much. Pa's in heaven now, Caleb said matter-of-factly. He told me to take care of Mama, but it's hard 'cause I'm still little. So I think he'd be happy you're helping. Tears welled in Nora's eyes at her son's simple wisdom. I think so too, sweetheart. So can we have the wedding today? Caleb persisted. Before the judge has to leave? Zachary looked up at Nora, a question in his eyes. It's your decision, he said. We can wait if you'd prefer a proper ceremony with more preparation. Nora considered the option. A small, quiet ceremony today, with just the judge, Rosa, Patrick, and the other ranch hands as witnesses. No finery, no elaborate preparations, just the simple exchange of vows between two people who had found each other against all odds. Today would be perfect, she decided. If Rosa doesn't mind the short notice for a cake. Judge Wilson smiled. I'll delay my departure until tomorrow to accommodate the celebration. The next few hours passed in a flurry of preparations. Rosa, summoned from town, was delighted by the news and immediately set about baking a wedding cake. Patrick and the ranch hands cleared the largest room in the house, arranging chairs and decorating with wildflowers gathered from the surrounding meadows. Nora had no wedding dress, but Rosa brought a beautiful cream-colored shawl that had belonged to her own daughter, insisting that Nora wear it over her best blue dress. Caleb was scrubbed until he shone. His hair slicked down with water, his excitement barely contained as he practiced walking slowly with a small pillow that would hold the ring Zachary's mother's gold band, which he had kept in a small box in his desk drawer, and a simple gold band that Patrick rode into town to purchase. Late that afternoon, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Nora stood in her room, making final adjustments to her appearance. She had pinned her hair up with the tortoiseshell combs that had been her mother's, and Rosa had woven small white flowers into the arrangement. A knock at the door announced Rosa, who entered with a small bouquet of wildflowers tied with a blue ribbon. For you, she said, presenting them to Nora. Something old is your mother's combs, something new is the ring, something borrowed is my shawl, and something blue is the ribbon. Thank you, Rosa, Nora said, deeply touched by the woman's thoughtfulness. For everything. Rosa patted her cheek affectionately. You bring light back to this house, to Senor Zach. I am happy for you both. She stepped back, assessing Nora's appearance with a critical eye. Beautiful. Now it is time. Nora followed Rosa to the parlor, which had been transformed for the occasion. Chairs were arranged in rows, filled with the ranch hands in their Sunday best. Zachary stood at the front of the room with Judge Wilson, both men in dark suits. Caleb waited nearby, solemnly holding the pillow with the rings, his face a study in concentration. When Nora appeared in the doorway, a hush fell over the room. Zachary turned, and the expression that crossed his face, wonder, joy, love, erased any lingering doubts she might have harbored. With no father to give her away, Nora walked alone down the makeshift aisle between the chairs. But she didn't feel alone. She felt Caleb's excited presence beside her, Rosa's supportive gaze, the respectful nods of the ranch hands who had accepted her as part of their community. And ahead, Zachary waited, his eyes never leaving hers as she approached. Judge Wilson conducted the ceremony with dignity and warmth, speaking of the commitment of marriage, the joining of two lives into one, the creation of a family bound by love rather than merely blood. When it came time for the vows, Zachary took Nora's hands in his. I, Zachary James Kane, take you, Nora Elizabeth Winters, to be my lawfully wedded wife, he said, his voice steady and sure. I promise to love and cherish you, to honor and respect you, to protect and provide for you and Caleb, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, from this day forward, as long as we both shall live." Nora's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, emotion making it difficult to speak the words that would bind her life to Zachary's. When Caleb presented the rings, his chest puffed with importance. A ripple of affectionate laughter moved through the assembled guests. "By the authority vested in me by the state of Texas," Judge Wilson pronounced finally, "I now declare you husband and wife. Mr. Kane, you may kiss your bride." Zachary drew Nora close, his kiss tender and reverent, a promise of all that was to come. The ranch hands cheered and clapped, and Caleb danced with excitement, the solemnity of his ring-bearer duties forgotten in the joy of the moment. The celebration that followed was simple but joyous. Rose's cake was cut and shared, toasts were made with good whiskey, and one of the ranch hands produced a fiddle, filling the house with music. Zachary and Nora danced their first dance as husband and wife in the center of the parlor, surrounded by their makeshift family. "Happy?" Zachary asked softly as they moved together to the music. "More than I ever thought possible," Nora replied, her head resting against his shoulder. "And a little scared too. Of Fisk. Partly. But also of this happiness, of having so much to lose now." Zachary's arms tightened around her. "We won't lose it," he promised. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." As the evening wore on, Caleb eventually succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep in a chair despite his determination to stay awake for the entire celebration. Zachary carried him to bed, with Nora following to tuck him in. "Good night, Pa," Caleb murmured sleepily as Zachary bent to kiss his forehead. The simple word, spoken so naturally, brought tears to Zachary's eyes. "Good night, son," he whispered. "Sleep well." Later, when the guests had departed and the house was quiet, Nora and Zachary stood on the porch, looking out at the starlit Texas night. The same stars that had witnessed their first conversation in this spot now shone down on their first moments as husband and wife. "No regrets?" Zachary asked, his arm around her waist. Nora turned to face him, her hands coming to rest on his chest. "None," she assured him. "Whatever challenges come, whatever Fisk might do, I know we made the right choice." "So do I," Zachary agreed, drawing her close for a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. As autumn gave way to winter, the newly formed Kane family settled into their life together. Judge Wilson returned to Austin with Thomas's affidavit and initiated proceedings against Robert Fisk. The legal process moved slowly, as he had warned, but regular letters kept them informed of progress. Christmas brought a light dusting of snow to the ranch, a rare occurrence that delighted Caleb. Zachary built a sleigh for him, and they spent hours riding around the property, returning to the house with red cheeks and bright eyes to warm themselves by the fire and drink Nora's hot chocolate. In January, news arrived that formal charges had been filed against Fisk for fraud, bribery, and most seriously conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Thomas Winters. The evidence was substantial, bolstered by additional witnesses who had come forward once they knew they would be protected. "It's finally over," Nora said one evening as she and Zachary sat before the fire, reading Judge Wilson's latest letter. "Fisk will go to prison. We don't have to be afraid anymore." "No more looking over our shoulders," Zachary agreed, his arm around her shoulders. "Though I never regretted the circumstances that brought you and Caleb to me, even with the danger." Nora leaned into his embrace, her head resting against his chest. "Nor do I. Sometimes the hardest journeys lead to the best destinations." "Speaking of journeys," Zachary said, a hint of excitement in his voice, "I've been thinking about taking a trip in the spring, the three of us." "Oh? Where to?" "Kansas City. I'd like my sister and her boys to meet my new family." Nora smiled at the thought. "I'd like that too. Caleb would love having cousins to play with. And there's something else," Zachary added, his hand moving to rest gently on Nora's stomach. By spring, there might be 4 of us making the journey. Nora covered his hand with her own, joy spreading through her at the reminder of the new life growing within her, their child. A sibling for Caleb, another branch on the family tree they were nurturing together. 4 of us, she repeated softly. I like the sound of that. Outside, snow began to fall again, dusting the Texas landscape with white. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, illuminating the faces of the man and woman who had found each other against all odds, a desperate mother with a fevered child, a lonely rancher with a wounded heart, brought together by chance or fate or perhaps a bit of both. From his bedroom, Caleb called out for a glass of water. Zachary and Nora exchanged smiles, the kind of silent communication that had developed between them over the months of their partnership and now marriage. I'll go, Zachary said, pressing a kiss to her forehead before rising. You rest. Nora watched him walk down the hallway to tend to their son, her heart full to overflowing. The journey that had begun in fear behind a barn had led here, to this moment of perfect contentment, to a family forged not just by blood or law but by choice and love and the courage to begin again. And in that moment, Nora Kane knew with absolute certainty that she was, at last, truly home.